The Taliban announcement of an all-male interim government is prompting reactions from across the world. The move seems unlikely to win the international support. The new leaders desperately need the same to avoid an economic meltdown in the country. The US has raised concerns over the formation of a new government in Afghanistan consisting of UN and US designated terrorists. However, it has claimed that it will judge the Taliban based on actions. This includes letting Afghans leave the nation freely. A statement issued by the US Department signals a renewal of a call on the Taliban to offer safe passage to US citizens as well as Afghans looking to leave. According to the United States, another big threat for the region and the entire world is China colluding with the Taliban. US President Joe Biden has said that he is sure that China will now try to work out an arrangement with the Taliban.
Well, China has a real problem with the Taliban, so they're going to try to work out some arrangement with Taliban, I'm sure. As does Pakistan, as does Russia, as does Iran. They're all trying to figure out what do they do now. So it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Remember, Washington has blocked the Taliban's access to Afghanistan's reserves, and most of which are held by the New York Federal Reserve. This in order to ensure that they live up to their pledges to respect women's rights and international law. But experts say that much of that economic leverage will be lost if China, Russia or other countries provide funds to the Taliban. Meanwhile, Turkey has given a guarded response to the Taliban government. The Turkish President Erdogan has said that they are keeping a close watch on the future course of actions in Afghanistan. In his first comments, he said that he was unsure as to how long the government will last.
As you know, a bit earlier, it's hard to call this permanent, but a temporary cabinet was announced. We do not know until when this temporary cabinet will last, but our responsibility is only to follow this process carefully.
The Turkish foreign minister also sounded a cautious note, saying that the international community should not rush into recognizing the Taliban's legitimacy. As the United Nations, Pramila Patten, head of the UN Women, has raised concerns over the non-inclusive government. She has said that the absence of women in the interim Afghan government calls into question the recent commitments to protect the rights of Afghanistan's women and girls. She has lashed out at the Taliban leadership for sending the wrong signal to the world and not acting on their stated goal of building what they said would be an inclusive, strong and prosperous society. Meanwhile, the UN has said that only an inclusive government can bring about peace in Afghanistan.
From our standpoint regarding today's announcement, only a negotiated and inclusive settlement will bring sustainable peace to Afghanistan. The United Nations remains committed to contribute to a peaceful solution, promote the human rights of all Afghans, notably women and girls, promote sustainable development in line with Agenda 2030, and provide life-saving humanitarian assistance and critical support to civilians in need.
For more on this story, we are now being joined by Hasib Saeed, who is a women's rights activist and founder of an event management company which helps unite Afghan culture across the world. Mr. Saeed, thank you so much for joining us on WION. What do you make of the new government in Afghanistan, an all-male government consisting of UN-designated terrorists? Despite initial promises from the Taliban that women will get a role in governance, yet we see an all-male government. How will the new regime impact the relations that Afghanistan has with the West?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. My greetings to you and the people of India. One of the main things that my partner, Ms. Ariana Saeed, has been talking about for so many days now is the fact that Taliban are making false promises. And this was confirmed by their announcement of the new government yesterday, which quite honestly, I see not so much of a Taliban government, but a continuation of ISI, of Pakistan government inside Afghanistan. I mean, you have been speaking about this openly right now, I heard it. We have got at least 4 Haqqanis at the head of many ministries. We have got Sirajuddin Haqqani, who is actually on the most wanted list of FBI right now, and there's a reward on his head. So one thing I don't understand again is the fact that how can they dare to put together a cabinet, a government like that, and the world is watching quietly and they're just playing along? So the fact that they do not have a Ministry of Women Affairs, and also something that was quite surprising to me, that even the Ministry of Health did not have anybody assigned to it. So this is not so much of a government. It's a new dictatorship that has been reassigned in Afghanistan and is just ISI, Pakistan's way of controlling the future of Afghanistan like they have tried to do in the past.
Right. Now, you've also spoken a lot about, in fact, so has your partner Ariana Saeed, about women's rights and the concerns that face the women and girls in Afghanistan as of now. With the new government in place, do you see the women's rights being respected in the future?
You actually saw a very clear indication of that not being the case yesterday. There were protests of women on the streets of Kabul, Mazar, Herat was a couple of days ago, and women were literally beaten up. They actually, in Kabul, were forced in the underground of this bank called Azizi Bank, and they were imprisoned literally inside an underground bunker or parking. The fact that Taliban are trying to portray a modern image is just a part of the game that has been taught to them by their leaders, by those who control them, because we clearly understand by now that Pakistan is in control of what's happening inside Afghanistan through Taliban. I know it sounds like as if I'm bashing Pakistan, but this is the reality. Just go and look at the new cabinet that has been put together. How many of them were bred, trained, and raised and educated inside Afghanistan? Literally none. So this is literally a game that's being played, and if the world and the West tries to fool themselves and accept that Taliban would indeed respect women's rights, that would be the biggest mistakes. And you know what? What will happen in the future, they will be held accountable.
Right. Now, you mentioned Pakistan, but we did see anti-Pakistan rallies in Kabul yesterday, protesting the role of Pakistan in the setting up of the new Afghanistan government, of course. Now, my next question and the final question that I have for you is, how will Afghanistan's relations with the world progress from this point on? There is now a government in place. Will all the Western countries be recognizing this government and negotiating with the Taliban here on?
I hope not. I hope not, because the negotiations that were taking place before Taliban came into power was the fact that, first of all, they would put together an all-inclusive government. Right now, this government does not consist of many minority groups there. It does not include Hazaras. It does not, I think, includes just one Uzbek, but that's more like of a little example of showing exclusivity. Tajiks, which is one of the major part of the population, they are not a part of that. And of course, women. So if these promises of Taliban are not being upheld, the West, the worldwide community should not recognize them.
Right. Mr. Saeed, thank you so much for speaking to us on WION, and thank you for joining us. WION World is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news updates on the move.